Hey there, Sart here. So, I don't normally do Dark Visions videos, but for lack of any other content to do, I figure I will show you guys how I cleared the 3 remaining bosses. I'm going to do 2 separate videos this time. I know last time I did like the last 3 bosses all in one video, but I think I'll break it up now so that it's not quite as long, and you can just kind of pick and choose which one you want to do, which one you want to view. I'll still, of course, include timestamps. I always include timestamps in all my videos, or I at least try to, especially for longer ones. So you can jump around to whichever boss battle, or if you just want to skip to the gear or skip straight to the fight, you can kind of skip around as you want to. So please make sure you look at the timestamps to view whichever part of the video you want to do. So we're gonna do the 2 sub-bosses here, the magical domain of water and light and the physical domain of water and darkness. And this Dark Visions begins this new trend where the bosses are completely immune to either physical or magical damage, meaning they will take absolutely no damage. So you can't even use, like on a magic stage, you can't use physical mages like Olive or anything like that, unless you do the reraise strategy where you kill them, re-raise them, and then they lose that mitigation. So that is an option. I'm not going to do that here. I don't take Dark Visions that seriously. I just kind of want to clear them out, and these bosses, they're not that bulky, so personally I don't have to resort to that strategy to get these done. But it does make it a little bit more difficult with chainers, especially on the magical ones. So for example, the magical domain, you cannot use any type of physical damage. It is completely immune. All right, and so I'm going to start with that one because personally I think that one's the trickier one. The physical domains, physical damage dealers are really easy to gear, and those are very, very easy to do. It's the magical ones that tend to be a little bit trickier. So I'm going to start with this one. I'm going to show you how I got a perfect score on this one using this team. So you see, we've got Louise. She'll be our breaker. Of course, Louise is very, very handy for that 90% spirit break. She'll also be doing some chaining. We've got Yuna, who's going to be doing the big damage. We've got Braska. He's just there to buff up Yuna's evoke mod on her LB. Of course, we've got Aerith, who's still, one of the best light buffer units out there. She's been out for a while. You could also potentially put in premium Fina if you wanted, but Aerith is, in my opinion, cheaper and easier to come by. I'm bringing Red Wing Cecil. He's absolutely not required. You could bring any kind of Omni Tank. Omni Tanks definitely will help reduce the amount of incoming damage. So you could bring like Chow to Omni Tank, you could bring Esther to Omni Tank. But I brought Cecil just because he also offers that nice LB field at the beginning of battle. If you start him in normal form with his TMR, that comes in handy. So I'm going to use that here, but he's absolutely not required. Just any Omni Tank will fit in Cecil's place. And then Tsukiko. So last time against whatever the boss was, I basically used almost the exact same team, except I had Dagger in place of Tsukiko to provide the light amp field. This time we're going to use Tsukiko to do the light imperil field. You could still use Dagger. So if you look at my last month's Dark Visions, I basically brought the exact same team. I just had Dagger in there instead of Tsukiko. You could follow that strategy as well and use Dagger instead if you want for the light amp field, but then that's going to overwrite the LB field for Cecil, so then you'd have to bring a different Omni Tank. Anyways, let's just take a quick look at the gear. So yeah, we've got Louise. So she's I basically just left her alone from the last one, so she's still got like provoke gear and all this stuff. The only thing I added to her is the Erinya's ring, and then I gave her Leviathan Esper so that she could quad. Really, she just needs to quad any any Chaos Wave Awaken Chain, because she is a physical mage, so you can't use her, even though she can quad cast Chaos Wave Awakened with her special skill Ionic Fire Blaster. You cannot use that because it is a physical type, and thus it will be completely immune. So you have to give her something with Chaos Wave Awaken Chain. So I gave her Leviathan. You could give her I wanted to give her Banishka Chain, so she could chain light with Aerith, but of course Aeronus Ring only allows you to quad cast black magic, and Banishka is white magic. So that's why I had to give her something with black magic Chaos Wave Awaken Chains. And that's all she really needs. Honestly, she doesn't even need to be Provoke necessarily, because Cecil is going to cover all the damage for this entire fight. So honestly, just give her Aeronus Ring, and that's all she really needs. Yuna in her normal form doesn't really matter. You can gear her however you want in her normal form. Brave Shift form, this is the gear that I have for her. Just high spirit on everything. You don't need the Dancer's Diadem. That's absolutely not required. That's just the highest spirit hat that I have. You could put something like Midsummer Boater in there, or some, just a high spirit hat. Silver pendant, that is Dagger's STMR, just comes with a lot of nice Evo damage. Yuna's necklace upgraded for the mod boost. Yuna's clothes is nice. And then, yeah, just your general gear for upping her mods. Her own card. You don't need to give her own card. Just a high spirit vision card will be fine there. So she's maxed out on everything: Esper damage, Evo damage, and LB damage. That's all you really need to focus on. Just trying to max out those three things. That's the big thing there. You're going to see my unit does way more damage than she needs to, so don't sweat it too much. I have crowned her Warring Spirit ability. It takes 2 crowns to give her that 2000 flat spirit. Very, very useful if you're using Yuna on this. That comes in handy for sure. And then I just put 1 crown in this just to give her a little bit more evocation damage boost. You may or may not need it. If you put 2 crowns in it, that Evo damage goes up to, I think, 120%. So that could help you with the gearing there. So 4 crowns total to get her up and running if you want. All right. Moving on. Braska, yeah, so just gave him, I gave him Broom, but I ended up not using it. I ended up using Blue Wave. You can do Blue Wave or Broom. Broom is handy because it does a light triple bolting strike. So, this boss is weak to light, so, but you don't have to use light. You can chain any element. It's just weak to light. So that's all that really matters there. Aerith is, doesn't really matter. The big thing is make sure everyone is paralyze immune. So some people may not be innately immune to paralyze, and the boss will do an AoE paralyze on turn 1. So just make sure everyone is immune to paralysis on this one. Otherwise, she's completely naked. All right. Cecil just needs to have his TMR in his Brave Shift form, and then in his normal form, and in his Brave Shift form. I just geared him, honestly, I just kind of left him alone from whatever I used him the last time, I think. Just give him lots of elemental resistances. That's all he really needs. I think that the boss does quite a few elements. I think it's mostly fire and ice. I think it does like some dark and maybe some light. It does a couple of different elements that it throws at you. So just kind of have him at least 100% across the board. And then, I think probably at least 100, 200% is probably safe on those. So just try and get his elemental resistances up. So Kiko in her normal form doesn't really matter. In her Brave Shift form, again, just high Evo gear. So anything you can have to give her Evo gear, this is just leftover. You don't have to have this vision card, absolutely not necessary. Yuna's going to carry the fight, so just do your best you can with your Tsukiko, but she doesn't really, see, I haven't even maxed out her Esper damage, so yeah, totally not required. She'll definitely do some nice, supplementary damage, but Yuna's really the big ticket here on this one. All right. So here's the team. We're going to get in here and we're going to get this done. Should take 3 turns, for the proper full setup on everybody. All right, let's do it. Alright, so there's that nullifying physical attacks. Like I said, you can kill it and re-raise it. You have to reflect re-raise off of a party member to put it on the boss, but yeah. And when it re-raises, it won't have that mitigation anymore. But that's just, to me, that's just more hassle than it needs to be. Alright, Luis is going to guard. We're going to save the break for next turn because we don't want to deal too much damage and kill this boss before we're ready. Aerith can go ahead and do her LB. Alright, Cecil will shift. Alright, he's going to do his Omni cover on this turn because it's going to do some fixed damage, AoE fixed damage on this turn. So he needs to do his Omni cover. We'll do the attack and mag breaks and Lunarian Might. Alright, Tsukiko will do Blessed Omamori, Prayer of Protection, and Purging Mandala Light. The Light and Peril Field. Yuna can go ahead and do her normal form, LB. Braska will do Support from the Faith. Alright, so it's going to do, it does almost exclusively magic attacks, which is why you want to bring a magic attack. However, it does do that one AoE fixed attack there on turn 1, which is why it's good to have an Omni tank to cover that. You could just mitigate the entire party with high mitigation, and you know that would also potentially keep you from taking any damage on the damage score, but an Omni tank just makes it easier. Alright, now Cecil will have to put up his magic cover. We'll do True Light Wall and we'll have him provoke. Yuna. Actually, we don't want him to provoke. What am I doing? Alright, we'll just do Shelga, cover, and yeah, we'll just break him again. Why not? He's already got all of his elemental buffs, so we don't need to worry about that. Alright, Tsukiko will shift. Alright, we'll do Earthquake and then double Solar Flare. Alright, Yuna will shift. Alright, and she'll do Knowledge of the Staff, Believe, and Hymn of Faith to get her all buffed up and ready. Alright, now Luis can do Incapacitate Target. Aerith can just guard. Alright. So there you go. Took some magic damage, but no big deal. Not nearly enough to impact our damage taken score. Alright, and you see Luis took the single target death attack because she's provoking and she has the Genji shield. You could also put Genji shield on Cecil and have him provoke that on that turn, but just make sure somebody is provoking that single target death and make sure they are death immune. Alright, time for the kill turn. So Yuna will set up her LB, Shining Karmic. Braska will do Blue Wave, or you could do Halo if you wanted. Aerith is going to do Quad Banishka, and Luis is going to do Quad Waterga. Now, since they're not chaining the same element, it's going to take a while for the chain to ramp up, but that's alright. So we'll start Aerith and Luis first. We'll let that chain ramp up, then we'll send Yuna, and then we'll send Tsukiko and Braska. Alright? Alright, we should do well over the damage cap. I believe the damage cap is only 4 bill. Yeah, we doubled it. Doubled the damage cap. Too easy. Alright. So, as you can see, if your Yuna's not quite as strong, or your Tsukiko's not quite as strong, or whatnot, or if you don't have Cecil for the LB field, don't sweat it. There's a lot of room for your team to, you know, not have quite as strong as gear. I went way overboard, way overkill on this one. As you can see, Yuna carrying the fight, doing almost 6 billion herself. She did the damage cap all by herself there, didn't even need Tsukiko. But yeah, Tsukiko coming in with 2.3. So, you know, together those two can definitely carry this fight without issue and get you everything you need for a perfect score. All right, so now let's move to the physical domain. This one's not nearly as tricky, so I'm not going to spend quite as much time chatting about this one. This one's pretty simple because physical teams are much easier to build and to gear for. So here's the physical team that I put together for this one. Esther's going to Omni tank. We've got Elena there. She's going to do some elemental buffs for everybody. 2B is going to be the primary damage, so just slot in, you know, whoever your strongest DPS is in 2B's slot. Kaito is there for the water imbue. We've got Cacteria to provide that slightly higher defense break. She's totally not needed. You don't need Cacteria if you don't want to use her there, but you know, that's I just brought her for that slightly higher defense break. And then Chizuru just is another extreme Nova chainer. You can build her for damage if you want to, but it's not necessary. 2B is going to do enough on her own. But yeah, I mean, you know, just in place of 2B and Chizuru, if you don't have those units, just put in your two strongest physical damage units that you have there, preferably ones that do extreme Nova chains so you can hit that chain score. All right. Esther is... You can ignore this form because she's not really here to do damage. She's here just to Omni tank. In this form, you just need to make sure she has plenty of ice and earth resist, at least 100%, because Elena is going to come in with an extra 100% buff on top of those. And so, yeah, I gave her some Blizzard Orbs, but it's not required because she's going to resist everything, so she's not even going to counter. Genji Shield, I don't think it's required because I don't think this one does any kind of death. So just use whatever gear you have. And you see this gear is just kind of left over from a previous event. And so just whatever gear you have to give her to make her 100% ice and earth resist. That's all you really need. All right, she's not going to do any damage, so I'm not even going to bother looking at her damage kit. All right, Elena is going to just stay in her Brave Shift form, and all she's going to do is use Crystal Refragmentation. That's all she's doing for the 100% buffs. 2B... so here's the build for 2B. Magister's gear for the chain cap boost, and yeah, then just some gear just to get her up. She hits human killer really easily. This is a human boss, so just make sure she's capped on human LB damage. Good to go there. All right, Kaito, you can ignore all this gear. He can be naked. He's not going to do any appreciable damage, so I'm not even really going to cover him. And honestly, he doesn't even need to be EX1. You don't even need access to his... you honestly don't even need access to his Brave Shift form with this team. So you can have an EX0 Kaito, and he will be perfectly fine. That will work. Cacteria, we'll come to her Brave Shift form real quick. And so... all she's going to do here is do the 89% defense break, the 90% attack and mag break, and the 135% water and peril. That's all she's going to do. And then she's going to hit the boss with some water because she is a physical mage, so her attacks will actually hit the boss. They just won't do any damage because it has insanely high spirit. But it will count towards our effective attacks score, so that will be useful. Chizuru in her normal form, you know, you don't need Tyvus' Spirit. I'm not going to use it. This is just left over from a previous Clash of Wills. And then in her, yeah, you see I didn't even really bother to gear her for killers or anything. She's just here to chain with 2B, really. All right, and that's it. All right, let's get in here and see how we cap this guy. So Esther will start with her Omnicover, Storm Guardian, Energizing Bunny. Alright, Kaito will do Swelling Current, Receding Tide, and Man of Few Words. We don't want to imbue with water just yet, so we're not dealing too much damage to the boss. All right, we'll imbue with water on next turn, while 2B sets up for her big burst. All right, Cacteria will do Million Needles Assault, Armor Breaking Needles, and Deadly Drought. All right, Chizuru can do, we'll do Eastern Wind, Strong Samurai, Staunch Samurai. But before she does that, let's go ahead and do 2B's LB. Elena can just do Crystal Refrag for the elemental buffs. All right, now Chizuru can go with all the buffs. There you go. Esther covers everything. Too easy. All right, and you know what I'm going to do? So I'm not going to shift Kaito on turn 3 like I originally, just to show you that an EX0 Kaito will work just fine. So I'm gonna do things just slightly differently. All right, Kaito will get ready to do that. I'm not going to do it yet. Again, I don't want to do too much damage to the boss. So 2B will use her Supreme Support to fill up her LB gauge, and then True Charge Blade for the Human Killer, and then Avoid. All right, so we're going to go ahead and do that first. All right, Chizuru is going to do Focused Strength for the attack buff for 2B. So that gives it gives everybody a 400% attack buff, but it's mainly for 2B. Like, we're all just setting up for 2B to do her big burst, really. And then Cacteria Elena can guard. And now Kaito will do the Pure Liquid Infusion. And we already gave everybody the water amps from the Swelling Current, so we're good there. So there's the Imperil, which is why we have to have Elena do the buffs. You could also just build Esther for 200% water and earth, which is not hard to do, and then you don't have to worry about any kind of elemental buffs. But in case you can't build her for that, you know, that's an option. All right, we're just going to do triple Shatterbolt. Kaito's just going to do triple any kind of bolting strike here. All right. Because we already have our defense break, so we don't need Kaito to do his Brave Shift LB at all. Chizuru will shift. Kaito is also easily replaceable by Nicole, Lord of the Seas Nicole, who I'll end up using him in my final boss, as you'll see. But I just figured I'd try something a little bit different here. All right, so we'll start Kaito and Esther to build up that chain, and then send Chizuru and 2B, and they will finish off the fight. Easy peasy. And again, we should do way over the damage cap with this team. Yeah, 7.3. So again, damage cap is 4 billion. So, you know, there's room for you to go lower if your team's not quite as strong. All right. And that should get us a perfect score. Let's see what we got. Yep. Perfect score. 2B should have carried it. And she did, 5.9 by herself. Chizuru chipping in. If I'd actually geared Chizuru, she would have done, you know, even more damage. Esther and Kaito, obviously, they're just for the chaining. That's all they're really needed for. Yep. So that's it. All right. That's how you do the 2 sub-bosses. And next up, I will do the final boss. You can probably already tell from my ranking that I do not have Riku. So if you're looking for a strategy against the last boss that does not use Riku, look no farther. I will be doing that in my next video. So you can look out for that, and I will see you on the other side.